right, so first of all, let me thank the organizers for having me here and to speak at this groundbreaking conference, bringing Romania into the world of the biology of aging and the longevity community to a much greater extent than ever before. I'd also like to thank the interpreters, without whom I would not be enjoying this conference nearly so much. Thank you very much for your excellent work. So I'm going to talk today both about the science of aging and about the sociology of aging, because as the Chief Science Officer of LEV Foundation, I oversee a lot of important research, but I also do a great deal of advocacy and public speaking to try to modernize people's thinking about this problem. I'm going to start by talking about COVID. That may be a surprise to you, but think about this. 6 years ago, humanity had a new problem, and humanity decided it wanted to solve that problem, and it was optimistic that it could solve that problem. And sure enough, 1 year later, we had vaccines developed and globally distributed that saved an astronomical number of lives. 1 year is what it took. Now, some of you may know that before COVID, the quickest, the fastest that any vaccine for anything had been developed and distributed globally was more than 10 years. We beat it by a factor of 10. Now, I want you to think about that. How did we do it? We did it by just choosing to be pragmatic and rational about the problem. We knew that we had a good chance of solving the problem. We badly wanted to solve it, and we did. I want society to make aging the new COVID. I want us to think about aging in that same way. We are already not in favor of aging. We wish it didn't happen. We wish we did not get sick when we got old. But that's all. We have somehow failed to form a pragmatic, rational view of how and how urgently we must bring aging under proper medical control. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about how we can do that and about why we're not doing it. It is, good. Now, of course, this is the contrast that I have just mentioned. For 200 years, we have been making great progress in bringing infectious diseases under medical control, and that is a large part of why we were so aggressive in relation to COVID, starting 6 years ago. So the first thing we must ask is, what is so different about the health problems of late life? Why do we not make such progress with the same kind of medicine? Now, most people think that this is the answer. Don't worry, you're not supposed to be able to read this slide. Most people simply think that it's because so many things go wrong in aging, in old age, and they go wrong at more or less the same time, and they exacerbate each other, that, the complexity of the problem has just overwhelmed medical research so that we have been unable to make progress. And that is, yes, that's part of the reason, but it's not the main reason. In order to explain the main reason, I want to explain a mistake that almost everybody makes when they think about aging. If you ask people the question, in what ways can somebody be sick? Then almost everybody will give an answer that looks a bit like this slide. They will say, well, there are infections, that's column 1. Then they will say there are inherited diseases, which a small number of people get from their parents, that's column 2. Then there's the big one, the chronic progressive diseases of late life, Alzheimer's, nearly all cancers, atherosclerosis, all the things I put up in very small font just now. And then most people would say that way out in the stratosphere there is this fourth category which is completely different, which they call aging itself. And it consists of these rather poorly defined phenomena like frailty. And most people think of it as so different from diseases that it's kind of off limits to medicine, that we will never really bring column 4 under complete medical control, however long we try. That's what the big black line is supposed to signify. But actually, that's completely wrong. And it's really important to understand that it's completely wrong. In order to do that, I'm going to start by giving you a definition of aging. I don't think anybody's done that today yet. And that's a problem, because different people have different definitions of aging in their heads. And that's a huge problem, because it means people can't talk to each other or at least they can't understand each other. So here's a definition of aging. And this definition is going to demystify aging for you. It's going to show you that we understand what aging is at a fundamental level quite well enough to be able to figure out what to do about it. Aging is the combination of two processes. There's a lifelong process, the one on the left, where our metabolism makes changes. It causes accumulating changes to the structure and composition of the body at the microscopic level, at the molecular and cellular level. And then there's a late life process where those changes cause us to get sick. They cause decline in physical function and in mental function, and that decline eventually kills us. The reason why that right-hand process only happens late in life is a very simple reason. It is that the body is constructed to tolerate a certain amount of these changes without a significant decline in function. But eventually, there is more damage than that, and that's why the word damage is a good word to use for those changes. All right, so what does that mean for the mistake that I mentioned? The mistake can be described really easily just by moving the thick black line. In this version of the table I put up earlier, all the columns are the same, but I'm emphasizing that column 3 was misclassified. On the one hand, column 3 is completely different from column 1. There is no way to compare them. Column 1 is caused by external sources. Column 3 is caused by being alive. So it is no surprise at all that the same types of medicine that have worked so well on column 1 have failed on column 3. But the other point that I make by moving the black line is that there is no meaningful difference between column 3 and column 4. The only difference is semantic, that column 3 consists of the aspects of aging that we have chosen to give disease-like names to. That really is all. And that, of course, means that column 4 is certainly not off limits to medicine, because nobody is going to claim that column 3 is off limits to medicine. So what does that mean in terms of doing something about aging? Well, if you make the mistake that I have just described, then you're going to be a geriatrician. You're going to try to directly attack the pathologies of late life as if they were infections, with some goal of curing them. And just one glance at this simple definition of aging shows you immediately that that's never going to work at all. Because if you try to attack something that is the consequence of something that's constantly accumulating, in this case damage, then it's obvious. Any child could see that the thing you're doing is going to become progressively less effective as time goes on. And yet, we still spend billions and billions and billions of dollars trying to do this. It's scandalous. Now, I'm not the first person to point this out. More than 1 century ago, a few people started to realize what I just told you, and they said, right, let us try to be more preventative. let us try, our goal here is to separate metabolism from pathology, to allow people to carry on being alive without getting sick. And we can't do it by separating damage from pathology, so let us instead try to do it by separating metabolism from damage. That sounds smart, doesn't it? You can just make the body run more cleanly and generate damage more slowly than it naturally would. Sounds great. Unfortunately, as you saw in the previous talk, metabolism is very complicated. This, of course, is a simplified diagram of a small subset of what we know about how metabolism works. And any of you who have ever written software will see that this is, the complete nightmare of uncommented spaghetti code. There is no way that we are going to be able to disentangle this network and stop it from doing the thing we don't want it to do, creating damage, without having unintended consequences, stopping it from doing things we need it to do to keep us alive. So, and of course, the worst of it is that this is only about what we know about how metabolism works. Any biologist will tell you that the amount that we don't know about how biology works is far more than what we do know. But luckily, there is a third option. And I'm going to call it the common sense option, because really, it's amazing that I was the first person to come along and point out that we can do this 25 years ago. We don't have to interfere with either of the two processes. Our goal is to separate metabolism from pathology. We can do it by going in and periodically removing some of the damage. We don't even have to remove all the damage, just some of it, every so often, so that even though metabolism is generating damage at the normal rate, still it does not reach the level of abundance that causes us to get sick. So that's what preventative maintenance is. And of course, the reason I call it the common sense approach is that we already do it successfully, very successfully, with simple man-made machines. This car is 100 years old, and it is working every bit as well as the day that it was built. And the reason it is not because it was designed to last 100 years. Not at all. It was designed to last like 10 years. But it has benefited from very comprehensive preventative maintenance, and here it is. So, what does that mean in practice? We don't need to interfere with either of those processes, and that means we don't really need to understand very much about either of those processes. We don't need to get into the details, the detailed mechanics of how metabolism generates damage. But what we do need is to describe what the damage is, so that we can figure out ways to remove it. And so 20-odd years ago, I generated this classification of damage. Of course, the body is a fantastically complicated machine, so it creates many different types of damage. But they can be classified into these 7 categories, and that's very useful because it allows us also to describe the ways in which we might do the damage repair, the maintenance. And that's on the right-hand side. So I will just talk about the top one in the interest of time. Cell loss, that just means cells dying and not being automatically replaced by the division and differentiation of other cells. We have certain really important parts of aging that are driven by that. Parkinson's disease is a great example, caused by the loss of dopaminergic neurons. What can we do? We can do stem cell therapy. We put cells into the body medically that know what to do, to divide and differentiate, to replace the cells that the body is not replacing on its own. And sure enough, it works. 30-odd years ago, it was tried, and it occasionally worked, but back then, we didn't know anything really about how to manipulate stem cells, so mostly patients did not respond because they got the wrong kind of stem cells. But a few patients did respond, and they responded like crazy. They were able to go without any other medicine for more than a decade without any Parkinson's symptoms. And so now that we know a lot about how to manipulate stem cells, everyone's very optimistic. There are 5 clinical trials going on right now to use stem cells against Parkinson's disease, and everyone's very optimistic. Of course, this way of thinking, even though it was completely novel when I first talked about it 25 years ago. It is now very mainstream. This paper, The Hallmarks of Aging, has already been mentioned a few times. It does get mentioned in pretty much half the talks that are given at conferences like this, and so it should, because it is basically right. It has been cited far more often than any other paper in the whole of the biology of aging this century. It's basically just a restatement of what I said a decade earlier, but that doesn't matter. The main thing is that it's generally accepted now. So what are we going to do? Well, this approach is a divide and conquer approach, which means that we need to develop the various components, the various damage repair medicines, and then we need to put them together in the same individual at the same time. And in normal engineering, that's easy, because you kind of know that it's going to work when you put the things together once you get all the bits working. But in medicine, it's not like that, because we have such a poor understanding of how the body works. So we may get surprises at that second step. And that's why at LEV Foundation, we are focusing on that second step. There are still some types of damage that we can't repair, even in mice, though, of course, people are working very hard to develop that. But there are quite a few that we can repair. And so we are putting them together in the same mice at the same time. We are starting in middle age, when the mice are already 1.5 years old, when they normally live to 2.5 years old. And we started with one experiment 3 years ago, putting 4 things together. It worked pretty well. This is what happened in the female mice. The thick red line is the mice that got all 4 of our interventions. The thick blue line is the mice that got none of the interventions. And the other lines are the ones that got some, but not all. And so what we got was additivity. We got a bigger effect with all the interventions than with any one of them or 2 of them. So that's great. Males were a bit more complicated, but basically the same story. So, of course, we did a lot of study of health as well, because we certainly only want to extend lifespan, even in mice, by extending health span. I get called the prophet of immortality a lot, but the fact is I don't work on immortality, and I don't even work on longevity. I work on health, and longevity is a side effect of health, but I want to get a big side effect. So we've measured a lot of health things. We want to do an even bigger experiment now. We wanted to use 8 interventions. Here are some of the things that we are thinking about including. I don't have time to talk about them now, but they are described in detail on our website. I won't talk about the AI agent very much, but there is a chatbot now that you can interrogate that has been trained on me, and it works quite well. There's also amazing graphics for it. And I'll stop there and just say that for those of you who want to read in depth about these studies and the motivation for them, please go to this paper that we published last year. Thank you to all our donors. We definitely need more of them. We do not have anywhere near the funding that we require to start the second study. So on the right-hand side, there's a QR code for anybody who maybe feel they want to help financially. Thank you very much for all of this, and please go to my website to learn more or email me. Thank you.